90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. Welcome to another edition of From the Press Box on this February 1st, 2021. My name is Rob Leonard. Joining me is my brother and award-winning sports writer, Tim Leonard. And if you haven't woken up yet, it is snowing still. It started last night. It's going to continue literally all day, it seems. And it's not going to be a fun day. So be careful out there, and you know the rules. Clean your car off if you do go out. Don't be one of those morons who are driving and the snow is bouncing back and hitting other cars. Just, make sure you clean your roof off. That's the main thing. And, of course, your windows so you can see out, too, because, as you know, brother, some people are out there. They just clean the front windshield. They don't clean the back windshield. They don't clean the side windows. They don't clean the roof. And you literally want to, throw rocks at them or something. But, that isn't a good thing either. So
everybody stay home. Stay home. Listen to your radio.
Well, some people can't, brother. Some people can't.
Listen to us, then listen to Big Ed. We got half your day planned already.
Well, some people do have to go to work, so I understand that part. There's places that are always open, brother. You know that.
Walk to work. So,
yeah, but hopefully if you're going to be out there, drive slow and clear the snow. It takes 5 minutes to clear the snow off your roof.
Not even.
And if you have an SUV and you say, I can't get up there, well, maybe you shouldn't own an SUV. But
exactly.
Get a ladder or something. Just make sure there's too much dangerousness. That's not a word, but there's too much danger when you're out there and the snow is flying back and you're the car behind it. So be careful. Anyway, brother, this week would normally be media week for the NFL and all the reporters that would go down to wherever the Super Bowl was. A lot of people think the NFL and 2 weeks of prep for the Super Bowl is a little too much. But you know what? They've done it almost every year since we've been watching the Super Bowl. Now, there was a couple of years maybe they didn't, but I know that. But this week it's a little different. First of all, the game is in Tampa Bay. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are one of the teams in the Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. So technically it's a home game for Tampa Bay. So, they don't have to travel. They wake up, they go downstairs, and basically they're at work, that type of thing. And Kansas City is staying in Kansas City until Friday because of COVID.
Correct.
So I'm not sure why they can't be in Tampa Bay right now.
I mean, they probably could be, but it's I'm assuming the NFL made these decisions a long time ago and just said, "Look,
sure
this is what we're going to do, and there's going to be limited media availability anyway. So let's just leave everybody where they are, and they can be at home, and they can do the best job of quarantining as possible." There's not going to be any big media gatherings. I'm my assumption anyway, because since I don't specifically know what's going on down in Tampa, is that there's just going to be big Zoom calls, and
right.
people will get to ask whatever questions they want. I don't know how long the sessions will be. Certainly not every question will be asked because there's only so many questions you can ask in any of those sessions anyway. But it's obviously it's COVID has changed every other sport and every how we're watching them, and the NBA had its bubble and the NHL had its bubble. Baseball, I guess, tried to put together a bubble and was somewhat successful. I guess I'll say mostly successful, except that Justin Turner actually with his positive test was announced pretty much as the Dodgers were winning the World Series. So it wasn't entirely successful by any means, but this is a way for the NFL to try to mitigate everything. And I think the worst possible scenario for the NFL and obviously for any player would be for them to somehow catch COVID in this 2-week time frame and not be able to play in the Super Bowl. This is the game that every football player alive has been waiting his entire life to play in. And if you all of a sudden hit a positive test in especially this week, but even last week, it wouldn't be conducive to actually playing in the game. So the NFL is doing everything they can. I heard a story last night that Tampa Bay, yes, they're home, and yes, everything is familiar to them. They're in their own facility, they're in their own weight room, they're in their own beds. Everything for them is like a normal home game. But they are also being tested twice a day. So nobody has been doing that many COVID tests. And
I'm not sure why you need twice a day. I mean,
they're just because it's a way to stay on top of it. And in this way, if anybody tests positive, then all right, we got to put this person aside. Because what's the worst possible thing that could happen this week for either team is that all of a sudden you lose a half a dozen players because of COVID. So this way, anybody who might have the virus would be able to be separated from the team as quickly as possible, and it would. I don't want to say it would eliminate the spread because it wouldn't, but for the most part, it would. That's what testing twice a day does. Yes, it seems severe and it seems excessive, but it's a Super Bowl, and you want your team to be as strong as possible going into this biggest game of everybody except Tom Brady's life, since Tom Brady, this is going to be his 10th Super Bowl. But this is the precautions, the extensive and excessive precautions that the NFL is taking with its biggest game.
If I was the NFL, I would try to buy vaccine for everyone and cut a deal and make it look like a good publicity thing for them. That's what I would do. If I would seriously, both teams would have shots by now. So
you can't do it that way though. I mean, how is that going to look if the NFL is going to take young strong athletes and get them tested before somebody's 90-year-old grandmother?
I think part of it has to be, brother, that half the country watches this. There's going to be some people. There are some anti-vaxxers, brother, who are already saying they're not getting a shot because they think every vaccine is going to kill them or make them silly.
Wow.
So to have the biggest game of the year still, it still is. This would be the way to do it. I mean, let's look at it this way, brother.
You're still going to have the game. All I'm saying is that I mean, I don't even know that I would want players vaccinated before the game because you don't know if anybody's going to have any kind of side effects from the vaccine. There's all sorts of possibilities. The easiest way to accomplish all of this is, all right, make sure you're self-isolating. I mean, it's to the extent with the Tampa Bay players. Sal Paolantonio for ESPN was reporting last night that the Buccaneers players have been told, because they have all friends and family coming into the city for the game. The players have been told, stay away from your friends and family. Don't visit with them. Don't see them. Talk to them on the phone, fine, but do not be in their company, because we want you to be sure that you are doing everything that you can not to pick up the virus in the next couple of days.
You know what that reminds me of, brother? It reminds me of the earlier football games where they'd say, stay away from your wives for the week. Don't have sex. And then, you hear guys like Joe Namath, who was, partying all week. And,
It's Joe Namath.
Well, it was Joe Namath. And I'm sure, the Jets, Weeb Eubank said, I don't care. Meanwhile, the Colts were all uptight the entire week. Let's put it that way. Maybe that's why they lost.
Well, I'm not gonna speak about any of that, but let's just say that both teams will be angry when Super Bowl Sunday shows up, or they should be anyway, if they're quarantining correctly.
Well, brother, one thing I have to say about sports right now, and this includes everything the last 6 months, for the most part, there has not been a big outbreak of COVID in any of the leagues. Yeah, there have been some, but not what maybe you would expect.
Well, I mean, you're talking about a team by team situation, brother. I mean,
right.
You can't just say for the league, because it's not like you're gonna catch it because you're a hockey player, or a basketball player, or a football player. You're gonna catch it because somebody else on your team has it. So, I mean, there haven't been outbreaks from one team to another because they've been testing, and if somebody is at risk, they don't play in the game. So that way, right, you're not seeing a spread from one team to another because they've been cautious about it, and because they've done a lot of testing, and to me that's a good thing, because the worst possible thing that could happen is that this thing gets spread from team to team. If you look at like college basketball has been, and college football too, has been pretty much the worst situation, because you're dealing with college campuses, and there's not really much of a way to prevent that sort of contact in such a large community. So that's college campuses have been I mean, the virus has gone through entire football teams. It's gone through entire basketball teams. We've seen that kind of spread and what can happen. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, Michigan State, shut down their entire sports program for a couple of weeks. And we saw what happened after they came back. Michigan State, the men's basketball team, lost to Rutgers by 30 points because they hadn't been working out. They hadn't been doing anything. And then they said, all right, we're going to play. This is going to be our first game back. Rutgers kicked the crap out. I mean, for lack of a better term, Michigan State scored 37 points in an entire game. I mean, that's horrible. But that's what COVID did. Right.
I understand that, but I think for the most part, I mean, I'm still for the pros. Maybe it's different when you have a campus, but I think it's been pretty good. I mean, this is all on the fly with how they're doing this, and I think it's been pretty good. We'll see what happens for the rest of the season for the NHL and the NBA. But I think the NFL sort of, I mean, it's a shorter season, obviously, but they also have more people on their team, so. There's something to say about what they've been doing about this whole thing. So, and the NFL,
I give them credit. I give the NFL credit. They have done a better job than I expected. There have been teams and situations where where it hasn't been effective. But I mean, you remember the Steelers had some issues, and later in the season the Cleveland Browns had some issues. I mean, there have been teams where it didn't really work so well, but overall and for the most part, and especially the playoffs, I would say either players have learned, or for whatever reason they haven't. There hasn't been a big spread, and there hasn't been a lot of players missing games.
Yeah, and the NFL, basically made it through their season, and their season started now until July. So by July, August, everything. Maybe not back to normal, but there'll be a lot more vaccines given out by then. So,
yes.
They sort of made it through. Obviously, not a lot of fans showed up at any of these games. A couple of places allowed fans in: Buffalo, Kansas City. There's going to be some fans of the Super Bowl, but it's first responders, not the. The thing is, I would have thought that the tickets were sold already. So. Maybe they just never mailed them and gave refunds, and then say, okay, we'll give them to first responders and do the good publicity thing,
Right.
Because
I would think probably those tickets probably were sold at some point, and then the NFL at some point probably just said, look, we're not having fans at the games.
Right. They have to mail
sorry about that,
tickets. But they mail the tickets out at a certain point so people can get them and plan and stuff. So,
right.
I feel bad for Tampa Bay because they're not. One of the things about holding a game is, hey, the city makes a lot of money from people, not just who have tickets, but just people who want to hang out and have a party.
Right. Your basic Super Bowl crowd is. First of all, they really rarely have an allegiance to either team, and that would have been the case even though it was a home game for Tampa Bay because they spread those tickets out all over the country.
Right,
and people travel to the Super Bowl. People travel because it's a big event. They typically have lots of money to spend, and they're pretty stupid about how they spend it. It's a lot of people going out and getting drunk and having a good time and just spending whatever it takes to just, just party up all weekend.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a good idea.
That's not going to be the case this weekend coming up.
No, and like, that's, but I would like to know how much NFL lost this year because, the TV contract's so good. These guys get money from that just crazily. I mean, obviously not having people in the stadium does take away, some money, but I would like to know how much they lost, or was it maybe breaking even or something? If they broke even, they should be happy. But who knows? I mean, it's a tough situation to think. Let's move on, brother. For those who don't know, last week GameStop, and among other stocks, AMC movie theaters also, among others, got a giant boost in their value because some guys on Reddit decided to buy stock in these companies to raise it because they sort of were angry at these hedge funds for betting against, it's called shorting a stock, but basically you bet against the company being successful. So the people who did this said, well, screw them. We're gonna buy stock in it, and it'll naturally go up because that's what happens. More people buy stock, the stock goes up.
Right.
And a lot of hedge funds lost some money, a lot of money. And who works and owns a hedge fund is the new Matz owner, Steve Cohen. And he's sort of involved with this a little bit. A lot of people on Twitter attacking him because he's a hedge fund owner. And he also...
Well, let's get this straight right off the bat, brother. You're kind of going in a dangerous path here. Steve Cohen was not involved specifically with the GameStop issue because
he didn't short it. His company didn't short it.
Right. The company that shorted that was most involved in the shorting was a company called Melvin Capital Management.
Right.
That's a hedge fund that they had heavily placed. I'll call them bets for lack of a better term, but they had heavily placed bets against GameStop, which let's say angered a lot of those Reddit users. Steve Cohen got involved because he's friends with the guy who runs Melvin Capital Management.
Right.
And his .72 asset management firm became involved because he actually floated a loan to this guy, apparently somewhere in the neighborhood of $750 million or more. I had heard more, but this is what I saw in one report was $750 million. So the people who were buying the stocks, and they were mostly buying it through something called the Robinhood app.
Right.
They want to be, raising their ire because they were basically taking advantage of the system. And let's face facts. Wealthy
who was the Reddit
stock
people?
Buyers? The stock buyers, yes, the Reddit people, if you want to call them that. The stock buyers were pretty much taking advantage of the system. But let's face it, wealthy people do that on a daily basis in this country. So I personally I'm not shedding any tears for a hedge fund manager who suddenly feels like they are on the wrong side of the game, because the game is always on the wrong side of regular everyday Americans.
Well, also, brother, part of it is that you can short a stock. Now,
right.
One thing Elizabeth Warren's always talked about is why is the stock market treated like a casino? And maybe down the road, maybe the shorting of stocks can go, pass a law saying you can't do that anymore. Because that's all it is a gamble. I mean, that is legalized. Right. I mean, the stock market is gambling. And I own stock. I own stock in many companies.
As do I.
And, part of the deal is, you want your stock to go up. And maybe you sell it then because you made some money. If it goes down, maybe you sell it because you don't want to lose any more money. And that's win and lose. Right. But to me, shorting a stock is a horrible thing. It's just like you're expecting them to lose. And then if someone is expecting you to lose, other people say, oh, that must be a loser in many ways.
Not only expecting, you're rooting for it to lose.
Yeah.
you're rooting for a negative result. And, I don't know why GameStop was involved. I don't understand. I don't know the small details here. But for whatever reason, GameStop was one of the stocks that was picked, and the stock went up something like 1,600% in a matter of a few days. Yep. And last I saw, it was trading at somewhere over $300 a share.
Right.
Now, the problem that people had with this is that that Robinhood app that I mentioned before started restricting their trades and wouldn't allow. At first, it took GameStop off of its sellable stocks, so people couldn't buy it. And then the Reddit users were upset about that because they were accusing Robinhood app of selling out and not protecting their interests, and they wanted to be able to buy more stock. And so Robinhood was seen as selling out to corporate America, which is exactly the opposite of what Robinhood is supposed to do.
Robinhood did the right thing.
Well, no, I don't think so. How do you restrict stock?
Because when something goes up too fast or goes down too fast, usually there's a stop on it. It's like if the stock market loses 1,000 points in a day or in 20 minutes, they usually put a stop on it. That's been around for a while. So
yeah, but that's if it's going down. This way, it was going up.
Well,
there's no bad result with stock going up. Except for hedge fund managers who have a bet on.
But part of it is it's sometimes people game the system.
Well, I'm not talking about wealthy people have been doing this for decades.
I know, but sometimes it's a scam too. The mob does this too, Tim. They'll drive up a penny stock to $1 and then they get out. And then
this is not a penny stock. This was a well-known company.
But it's not a company.
Anyway, you're getting off topic, brother. The reason that Steve Cohen, yes, you are. The reason that Steve Cohen was involved, like I said, is he made a substantial loan to this Melvin Capital Management, which lost several $1 billion in this whole situation. And because of that, baseball fans and Met fans, first of all, were wondering, like, what's going on? Our extremely rich owner suddenly is leveraging his wealth and could lose it. And Met fans had this the typical Met fan reaction of, we're cursed, and look what's happening now. Our man Steve Cohen, Uncle Stevie, as we like to call him, is suddenly in a situation where he's going to be broke. They took it to that extreme, and other people who don't care about baseball at all saw Steve Cohen as the guy who was rescuing Melvin Capital Management to continue to do more harm to regular everyday stockholders by bailing them out. So that came with threats, and Steve Cohen's family and Steve Cohen himself were threatened. So he decided, hey, I'm gonna get off Twitter for a little while. I'm gonna deactivate my account, and that's kind of where we are right now. Is that a lot of people were upset that Steve Cohen was helping this hedge fund manager, a friend of his.
Well, if they're buddies, and like you said, the both of them are buddies, so I can understand that. It might be a way to buy out the company. It might be, which is I'm sure a good company. Or it might be a way to just get the money back later on. Look what happened a few years ago with the Mets after the Bernie Madoff disaster. They got a loan from Major League Baseball because they were so short on money. Right. And the funny thing is, a team like the Dodgers, who weren't as popular with the commissioner's office, they were forced to sell.
The ownership group, you mean?
Yeah, the ownership group, because there was a massive divorce that wasn't ending. Yeah, and eventually
Major League Baseball loves the Dodgers. They just didn't like that Dodger owner.
Yeah, so so that's something to think about too. And $750 million is a lot of money. It's almost $1 billion.
Again, like I said, I had heard that the number was much higher than that. I had heard originally that it was about $2 billion. So
it might be. I mean,
but that was the reaction of a lot of Met fans. I saw this on Twitter. A lot of Met fans were asking Steve Cohen on Twitter, like, what's going on? You're like, why are you doing this? And we're like looking at it as the team is going to run out of money.
Right.
And Steve Cohen is like, there is no connection between one and the other. And not to mention the fact that this guy is worth $14.5 billion. So
right.
750 million or 2 billion or whatever, he's far from broke.
Right.
He's not going his money's not going anywhere. So Met fans don't have to worry. You still have a guy who's capable of buying every major league player on earth and using them for his team if that's what he actually wanted to do. So Met fans don't have to worry. Steve Cohen his money isn't going anywhere.
No, and that's true too. And to attack him on Twitter, I understand why he got off Twitter, but to me, Twitter isn't the best place to be. Even though I know you want me to get on Twitter, so but I'm really not. But
Smiling
Rob Leonard. Okay, brother. We should say that Zach Scott has been named acting general manager of the Mets after the last general manager.
Jared Porter.
Jared, again, another Jared.
I didn't want to say it.
Gets in trouble, but at the same time, this is, you can't be doing this stuff anymore. If you're going to be, swimming in the
wait.
Hold. If you're going to swim in the upper echelon of management, you can't be doing this crap.
But it was something he did 5 years ago, brother.
I know.
6 years ago. You're saying it like he did it last week.
No, I know that,
and I'm certainly not condoning what Jared Porter did. And one of the things he was accused of, there was twofold. One was harassing this female reporter and sending her like 60 some tweets or texts. I'm sorry,
right?
And just not getting the message that, hey, I don't want to talk to you. But then he was also accused of sending her a lewd photo via text, which he claims was a joke. He said it was not him. Why he would send something like that for any reason is beyond me. But this woman obviously didn't want to talk to him, and then receives a photo like that via text. It was stupid. And here we are again with a situation where, first we had Carlos Beltran when the Mets hired him, and he winds up getting fired for his role with the Astros and the garbage cans and the cheating. But it's also similar to Wally Backman with the Diamondbacks, where he was hired as a manager a few years ago, and then they found out about a DWI and some questionable behavior besides that, and they fired him 3 or 4 days after he was hired as manager. Jared Porter was out of the Diamondback system as well, so obviously vetting is not a strength for the Diamondbacks, but it doesn't seem to be much of a strength for the Mets either.
Yeah, I mean, I often wonder. I'm not a cancel culture guy, so I wonder how long does he get to maybe come back? Same with Wally Backman. There's got to be a
Wally Backman's done, brother. I mean, we know this by now.
I know that, but I'm just saying, he would have been a good manager, maybe if not with the Mets or the Diamondbacks, or whatever. He was a good manager. I mean, where do you, where's the forgiveness? Where's the time limit on this happen? Because it's not really fair. Then again, if you pay your time, it's like going to jail. Except you're not going to jail; you've just been fired or let go.
I'm someone who I'm all about second chances. I was, I dealt with a lot of people because I was someone who said, Michael Vick has paid his dues. He's paid his debt to society. He was in prison. He did everything he was supposed to do, and people were still saying, he shouldn't be in the NFL. Well, where else is he going to play football? Where else is he going to make a living? That's what he does. He's a football player. So, and I understand though that it is a privilege to be a professional athlete. Yes, you have to have all kinds of talent and you have to be able to perform at that level. But if you still can, and people are still saying, well, he doesn't deserve that or he shouldn't be doing that based on a past transgression, I don't necessarily agree with that. But that being said, these teams will hire who they want to hire, and that includes players, it includes management. Wally Back was not going to get a job as a Major League Baseball manager because of what he's done in the past. And it should be a message to people on any level in professional sports that, aside from knowledge and savvy and talent, that you also need to be a decent human being and not be that kind of abusive jerk,
right,
for lack of a better word.
But there also should be a time where a certain amount of years or whatever, where you say, okay, he's paid his price, maybe he can come back, be forgiving, show forgiveness to him, but he should also, or she, whatever, should say, hey, I've learned my lesson and I'm not going to be stupid again.
Yeah, but it's hard to prove something like that. It's hard to say that somebody has learned their lesson. Because there's examples of people who have never learned their lesson, and they're still out there. But again, would you want one of these people representing your team and your brand? That becomes the issue. That's the difference, because now it's the term is my brand instead of my team or whatever. The brand is I think I never liked the word. I hear it enough in the corporate world. But that's where we are right now. I know, but it's also businesses. I know, but it's also a bad term. But I understand where you're coming from. Anyway, brother, you're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. From the Press Box is what you're listening to. We're here every Monday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. We're part of the WHPC Sports Talk family, which is every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., with an additional show every Tuesday from 10 p.m. to midnight. This show becomes a podcast later. So this is a talk show on the radio, but also a podcast later on, and you can find it wherever you find podcasts. But it starts at Spreaker.com, among other places. But it's also on our website, nccradio.org. Podcasts are also available there. So as they're all over the place. That's what podcasts are. They're like weeds, but good weeds. Anyway, brother, Steven Matz. Steven Matz, brother, traded to the Toronto Blue Jays for 3 prospects. I know why they got rid of them. They're trying to open up some money for some future players they might want. Trevor Bauer, bro. You can say Trevor Bauer's name. You're allowed.
I don't want to curse it, brother. Everyone says, "Oh, he's going to come to the Mets." Well, he might not.
Somebody's got to explain to me how Steven Matz gets a raise to $5.2 million a season, a contract that he signed, I believe, in December, after he had about as bad a season as any major league player. Granted, an abbreviated season, but 0-5 with a 9.68 ERA, dropped from the rotation. It was just abysmal, and somehow wound up getting a small raise.
Well, it's probably his contract.
But no, it wasn't. He signed a 1-year deal. He's still an arbitration candidate. So he wound up actually getting a small raise. He's lucky he's still in baseball after that season. The Mets could have and probably should have dropped him and non-tendered him. But at least this way they got they paid the money. He's on a set salary. They got 3 prospects from Toronto, the best of which is a right-handed pitcher by the name of Sean Reed Foley, who more than likely will be a bullpen piece for the Mets, but is capable of starting. But it really, I'm disappointed because Steven Matz is a Long Island guy. He had big expectations when he came up with the Mets. I mean, people were comparing him favorably to Noah Syndergaard. And mostly it was just because Steven Matz hadn't had surgery at that point, right. And he was a better health risk. But Steven Matz with the Mets, 31-41 with a 4.35 ERA over 107 career starts. I mean, that's not good.
No, but it's funny because I think a lot of Met fans gave him a slight pass on his bad pitching because they liked him. He's a likable guy. A very likable guy, but also a hometown kid. Yeah. But at some point, results have to be,
the arbiter.
That's why he's not around anymore.
Well, this to me was just a situation of besides pairing $5 million from the payroll to possibly be used as a way of fitting Trevor Bauer underneath the luxury tax number. This is just it's a classic change of scenery type trade, and let's see if Steven Matz can actually do something somewhere else. I don't know that playing at home was in any way intimidating to him, but now he's moving from the National League East to the American League East, and things certainly won't get any easier for him over there. That's for sure.
Right.
So just a shift, brother. Unless you have something else to say about Steven Matz.
No. I just like I said, I like the guy. I expected more, but I guess because he was a local guy that he got a slight pass, like Conforto. You like
Conforto's been a good player. I mean, he was very good last season. So I mean,
I think Conforto's gotten a slight pass too, because I think when he first came up, he was really good, and it's slightly gone down. I expected more of 300 seasons every year from him, and we don't really get it. So,
I said, the 2020 season was very good.
He was good. So you're right,
and he's going to get paid for being very good last season.
I hope so.
Just to shift it over to the Yankees, I just wanted to quickly point out Masahiro Tanaka is officially gone from the Yankees. The right-hander signed with his former club in Japan, the Rakuten Golden Eagles, last week. Right. The Yankees also signed side-arming reliever Darren O'Day to a one-year contract worth $2.5 million. And the Yankees, I saw some crazy headlines on this, which didn't make any sense to me. But the Yankees basically dumped Adam Ottavino's salary on the Boston Red Sox. MLB.com, for whatever reason, reported that the Red Sox pried Ottavino from the Yankees. And I'm like, what are they talking about? I mean, the Yankees actually sent money to the Red Sox to get them to take Ottavino. And they also sent a minor league right-hander named Frank Herman from the Yankees for a player to be named or cash, which means that they're getting nothing back for this guy.
Why would they give so much to get rid of him? I mean, money and
because Ottavino was due to make $8 million this season, and the Yankees are pushing right up on the luxury tax.
Right.
So them getting rid of Ottavino and $8 million off of their salary cap. Number one, it allows them to sign Darren O'Day for $2.5 million as opposed to $8 million, because this is the final year of Ottavino's contract. It was 3 years for $27 million, and like I said, the $8 million figure for this season is the last season of the contract. But the Yankees are hoping to sign Brett Gardner to something in the neighborhood of a 1 year contract for about for about $5 million, and to bring him back as a fourth outfielder. Now, Gardner, I don't know what he's looking for. I don't know how amenable he's going to be to saying, all right, you know what, this is how much we have left under the luxury tax, and we're not going over it. And right now, the Yankees are basically fighting for every dollar that they can find. So that is becoming the issue. And I'm sure they could sign somebody else, or they could make Mike Tauchman the fourth outfielder if they wanted to. There's a lot of different ways to go. I know the Yankees like Brett Gardner's leadership in the clubhouse. They like having that veteran guy around who's been there, done that, and knows the kind of sacrifices that need to be made, and also know how to deal with the media, although obviously with COVID, that hasn't been an issue for a while now. But, they like having that leadership guy in the clubhouse. And it was CC Sabathia before he retired, but now Brett Gardner has been the guy to kind of pick up that mantle and be that clubhouse leader. I don't know who becomes that guy after Gardner leaves. I'm not sure. Because it's not always a veteran presence. Maybe Aaron Judge steps into that role for real, but who knows? I don't know how he is in the clubhouse. I don't know what kind of leader he is amongst the team. I mean, let's face facts. Aaron Judge is still a fairly young player,
right?
But who else comes in, or who else who else is capable of assuming that role on a team, and it's an important role on a team. So, I think if they plug Brett Gardner into that spot one more time, then they don't really have to worry about that aspect of it so much.
Right, and could this be the first trade between the Red Sox and the Yankees since Sparky Lyle and Danny Cater?
No. It was the Yankees. There was a trade. I want to say it was 2014. I don't even remember the players. Kelly Johnson was one of the players. So, I mean, that's how it was in the stories, because I don't even remember. It was two nondescript players who really weren't members of either team for very long. But Kelly Johnson was so basically it is the Sparky Lyle Danny Cater. I remember that. It's obviously it's quite rare that the Yankees and the Red Sox make trades with each other, and I think for the most part it's because of the Sparky Lyle trade, because it blew up so famously on the Red Sox. That why would the Red Sox want to make a trade with their arch rival if it had the potential to blow up on them? Now, this trade is let's put it this way: Ottavino might want to be in a disaster for the Red Sox. So he wasn't at the end of last season. Aaron Boone wouldn't even use him. He didn't trust him. And Ottavino had some issues last year. I mean, his ERA was 5.89, but a lot of that was based on one outing where he gave up 6 runs and didn't record an out. So when you're talking about a relief pitcher in 2020, when you're pitching probably in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 innings for the entire season, if you go one appearance where you give up 6 runs and don't get an out, your ERA is going to balloon. But that being said, Aaron Boone did not trust Ottavino late in the season and stopped using him. So, for the Yankees to be able to unload him is a good thing. Now, the Red Sox see him as a potential closer. So it kind of tells you where the Red Sox are right now. They're not a contender. And I know you're probably going to point out that I'm saying that with some measure of glee, but the Red Sox are not a contender this season. Their pitching is just as much a disaster as it was last season, and they've done nothing to address it.
Well, you're always anti-Red Sox, brother. You're anti-Patriots. You're anti-Celtics. I would think that maybe you have a prejudice against the city of Boston, which is a very fine town. We've gone drinking there.
Yes.
Okay, brother. Let's talk about spring training. Might be delayed. There's a lot of rules maybe that might happen. I don't want National League to have a designated hitter. I don't want that to be an agreement at any. I think get rid of the designated hitter. That's what I would do. But that's get rid of it.
Are you on drugs?
Yes, I am. I'm on plenty of drugs.
Your team wants the designated hitter, brother. Your Metsies are desperate for the designated hitter, because without the designated hitter, Dom Smith doesn't play. So you might want to reconsider your stance on the designated hitter. Uncle Stevie wants the designated hitter, brother.
Okay, well, that's different.
All right. I'll put it in terms that you can understand. Uncle Stevie wants the designated hitter.
Yeah, but
change your mind.
Is this a permanent thing? I mean,
it should be. I don't understand why it's being played with. Basically, right now, what's going on is that baseball is considering spring training. A little more background. Spring training is supposed to start in 2 weeks. I know Major League Baseball would like to delay it by as much as a month to allow the vaccination process to continue, to get as many people vaccinated as possible, to get that ball rolling better than it has been rolling. Because let's face it, I'm not ripping Trump just to rip him, but the vaccine rollout has been a disaster.
Well, he made sure of that.
Biden is playing catch up with that, and we're trying to get more doses of vaccine. Again, this is Trump turned down 100 million vaccines, said, no, we're good. But no, we're not good. We could have been putting those in people's arms today, as opposed to New York State running out of vaccine, as New York City especially running out of vaccine. But baseball has proposed starting spring training on March 22nd, which obviously is still a month and a half away, and then having a 154-game season. It's just like the old days, brother.
Yeah, but how do you start on month into what would have been, or more than a month into spring training, and then have a 154 game season. It's only 8 games less. How do you do that?
Well, because first of all, the spring training wouldn't be as long, which I'm sure the players would like. The danger involved in that is you could wind up running the risk of having more injuries earlier in the season. And as I'm sure Yankee fans would be especially hesitant of that, given that Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton seem prone to injuries. But yeah, the spring training would be shorter, which means that pitchers, especially starting pitchers, would not be as stretched out when the season started. So that would be an early part of the season where you need to rely on your bullpens even more. But the other thing that comes with that is, despite the shortened season, by 8 games, like you said, the players would receive their full salaries, not a prorated amount. So that's to the players' advantage. And again, the DH is also to the players' advantage because it means another job. So there are advantages, but the disadvantage and the thing that the players do not want and have said that they will not accept this is the owners want the same expanded playoffs as we had last season. And I hated those. Well, there's too many teams.
There is, but you know what? That's where they make their money.
Of course. I understand the reasons for it, brother, but it's not baseball. You're turning the baseball playoffs into the NHL.
That's true.
Half the teams in baseball should not make the playoffs.
I agree, but also you don't want them playing in really cold weather. That's one of the problems.
It would push the season back another week. That's another thing,
right?
That's when you say, well, how are they going to play all these games? Well, if they push the season back another week, baseball. The motivation for major league owners is they are trying to push back their season as far as they can because they want to get fans back in the seats at some point,
right?
And that's their motivation on this. Aside from trying to play as much of a season as possible, and also in some regards to keep players healthy, because we still do obviously have a COVID situation in this country. But that's they're trying to do what they can to mitigate all of those circumstances. But one thing that you can't mitigate is the weather. So baseball can't just say, "Oh, we'll just play into January." No, you can't. There comes a time where it's too cold to play baseball and the fields are going to be frozen and you cannot play. So there's only so much that you can push the season back. The thing is, in the National League, we almost know at this point already who the playoff teams are going to be. That's how much of a division there has been among the teams in the National League.
Mets, Dodgers, Cubs.
Padres, Mets, Cardinals, and Cardinals in the Central, Mets, and the Braves. Those 5. Yeah. Those are the 5 teams. And then it's going to be maybe one of those teams doesn't make it. Maybe they get injuries or whatever. But those are the 5 teams in the National League who will make the playoffs. So that is the situation where we're looking at. But what can baseball do to possibly make the players a little safer? Arizona and Florida still are not, are still not doing it right when it comes to COVID, but B, they're still experiencing a lot of issues in both states. And obviously that's where baseball has spring training is all over Florida and all over Arizona.
Right. So that's a good point.
So that's where that is. We'll see soon. It's going to be probably over the next week where a decision is made, because otherwise the week after that is when players need to start reporting. So if you're going to push it back to March 22nd, there are already players who are ramping up their preparation. I saw a video of Aaron Judge in the batting cage down in Florida last week on the news. So Aaron Judge is getting ready for the season already. So I hope he's doing his stretching. I hope he's taking some yoga classes, because that's what he needs.
Well, it's not like they have to work in a men's clothing store for the winter,
Right.
Anyway, brother, why is Curt Schilling such a jerk?
If only, that's a question for the ages, brother. That's a question that somebody with a psychology degree, I think, would have to answer, because I don't know. I've had my issues with Curt Schilling on Twitter, by the way. So, and believe me, I'm not alone. And I'm not talking about like not liking some of his tweets. I'm talking about direct interaction where he used bad language and used even worse quote unquote facts because they weren't facts at all. But Kurt Schilling,
he seems like he missed his opportunity to rush the Capitol a couple of weeks ago.
He would have loved to have been there, brother.
I'm sure that
he would have loved to have been there.
So the deal is that this year there were no inductees
to the Hall of Fame, brother. That's good.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame,
let people know.
Baseball Hall of Fame, we should say. You're right.
Yes,
but the people who were inducted last year but didn't get to do their speeches are going to be there this year.
Derek Jeter.
So Derek Jeter will be there. Among other people, Marvin Miller is another person. Who's
Larry Walker, the phenomenal outfielder from the Colorado Rockies, and Ted Simmons from the Veterans Committee.
Right. So at least there'll be people there this year. So
well, we hope. Again, I mean, this is something that the 2020 class was not formally inducted. Because of COVID, and they didn't want to bring people together, and the Hall of Fame has been trying to push this back as well because they understand that Derek Jeter and even Larry Walker, because Larry Walker is Canadian, and Canadians don't mind driving 8 hours for anything, but the combination of those two people at a Hall of Fame induction ceremony, you're talking about 100,000 people descending on Cooperstown.
Right.
If this thing is opened up, and I don't know that it's going to be opened up, but if there are in normal times, this is 100,000 people, and whether or not we get to that by July 25th when the induction ceremony is scheduled for Cooperstown. Is anybody's guess. I mean, I'm cynical about it, but if nothing else, it's going to be a very high rating for whichever TV network it's on. If that's the baseball network, I don't know. If they put it on ESPN one way or another, somebody's getting a big number from this,
right?
Because Derek Jeter is obviously one of the all-time greats in the sport, and obviously is one of the most popular New York Yankees of all time. One vote shy of a perfect, of a unanimous ballot. But this year, I'll be totally honest on this one. I'm glad nobody was elected this year. I didn't want Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens or Kurt Schilling sharing the stage with Derek Jeter and to a lesser extent Larry Walker, because Larry Walker was always one of the classy players in baseball. He was always a guy who played the game right. He was a five-tool kind of guy. He could hit with power. He had a cannon for an arm. Great fielder. Maybe not much of a runner, but did everything well on a baseball field. And it really would have bothered me if to hear Derek Jeter's speech, and it likely would have been preceded by Kurt Schilling just spewing all kinds of vile nonsense. Remember that Kurt Schilling is the guy who advocated hanging journalists.
Yeah,
this is the kind of person that we're dealing with. Or you would have had Barry Bonds, and Barry Bonds more than likely will talk about being persecuted by the system, and he was never found guilty of taking anything. And the same would be said for Roger Clemens. Their speeches will be loaded with excuses.
I'm sure
it's not like Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens is going to say during their speech, "Yeah, I would like to say for the record, yes, I did all of the things I was accused of." That's never going to happen.
No, and that's just the way it is. That's
what I talk about when I talk about cheaters and jerks not being on the stage with Derek Jeter and sullying his grand day. That I have absolutely no problem with what the writers did. Schilling wound up with 71.1% of the vote. He was 16 votes shy. Clemens got 61.1%, and Bonds was at 61.8%. Now, the other thing you need to remember, Clemens and Bonds, as well as Sammy Sosa and Schilling, next year is their 10th and final year on the ballot. Now, Clemens and Bonds have pretty much seem to have peaked as far as their vote totals. it seems like for now that the writers are in a situation where if the Veterans Committee wants to put these guys in, then let them do it. But the writers, I don't want to say they know what they know, because that's a little disingenuous, but it's pretty obvious who cheated and who reaped the most rewards from cheating and who did it clean. But also, brother, they did it clean. But they also sort of, there were other players who probably were juiced up too. But right.
But they weren't as hated as Barry Bonds and Kurt Schilling, because those guys were jerks, and Clemens was a jerk too. Yeah, I'm not going to say Clemens wasn't a jerk, because he was a jerk. He was a headhunter. He threw at people. He threw at the Yankees when he was with the Red Sox. I hated him when he was with the Red Sox. He threw at Mike Piazza for no reason. Well, I don't know about no reason, but Well, no reason.
but the situation is that we I don't want to say we know, because obviously there's no specific proof. But there are a lot of guys who were on the Mitchell report for baseball. And we're going to run into issues next year too, because next year, besides being the last year for all those guys that I mentioned, it's going to be A-Rod's first year. So right. Alex Rodriguez is on the ballot next year for the first time. David Ortiz is on the ballot next year for the first time. Obviously, with A-Rod, we know he took steroids. He admitted as much. He was suspended for a year for it. David Ortiz was in the Mitchell report, and he keeps swearing, "Oh, I never took steroids. I never took steroids." Meanwhile, the Minnesota Twins released him. That's how ineffective he was for the Twins, and then he becomes a Hall of Famer for the Red Sox.
Right. Well,
it's suspicious. Let's put it.
Anyway, a couple of more things, brother, before we leave. We got about 2 minutes left. Islanders, man, what's happening with them? They're losing. They lost twice to the Flyers this week. They're 7th place in whatever the division is called. The Suzuki or
let's go East, brother.
Yeah, we'll go with East.
7th place out of 8 teams. It's not good. They need more offense. They are not scoring enough. 19 goals in 9 games. That's just over 2 goals.
Can't do that.
That's not getting it done.
And also the Knicks and the Nets. They're playing okay.
Tough loss for the Nets last night. The Washington Wizards scored 8 points in the last 10 seconds to beat the Nets.
Was that Reggie Miller there?
Basically, it was a 3-pointer from Russell Westbrook. The Wizards then stole the inbounds, and Westbrook hit a 3-pointer near with like 3 seconds left, and the Nets wind up losing that game. It was disgraceful.
Okay, brother, we're gonna have to end the show anyway. You've been listening to From the Press Box right here on 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College. We're here every Monday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Coming up next at 10 o'clock. Big Ed Newlands with the Good Gold Show. And thanks to Sean Novat for keeping this on the air. We'll see you next time. Take care and bye-bye.